The following is your 2021 self-study demonstration using tax year 2020. In this video, we're going to introduce you to the self-study program and show you basically how to use it and what the various steps are. And actually, we're actually going to create a very simple tax return so that you'll have some knowledge going into this. So we're going to start by looking at, so you can already see that I have the self-study program PDF file up on the screen. So I have already downloaded this file and I am now displaying it in my PDF viewer. Now, most of you are probably using Adobe Acrobat Reader. I am using a different product, but it's irrelevant. Whatever product you're using, you need to download the file and you need to display it in the reader. Now, one thing that you have to be careful of is in Chrome, if you're just viewing this file within Chrome, when you click on various links to get to places, you may find that the links don't do anything. You're not able to get to the locations that the links point to. And if that happens, it's because you have not downloaded the file. The file needs to be downloaded from the Google Drive folder that I've set up. So let's go ahead and look at the National Tax Training Committee Self-Study Program, Tax Year 2020. So that's the first page that you're looking at. Now I'm scanning down to second page. So course introduction, you really should read all of this information in the course introduction. It's several pages long. And you can see it talks about the AARP Foundation Tax-Aide lesson plans. So you get some idea of what the objectives are for this training. Minimum essential knowledge, support and supervision. The mentor's role. All of you should have a mentor that you've already been assigned, or if you haven't, we will be doing that in the next step, assigning you to a mentor. Guidance for small groups. Okay. The advantage to small group training. And then using Google Meet. You'll be using Google Meet quite a bit, at least once a week, in order to meet with your mentor. And then we have the table of contents. And all of these lines in the table of content can be accessed. So if you want to get directly to income, for instance, maybe you want to look at wages or income, you can just click right over here on the page 19. It'll immediately bring you to that page. So we'll go through the table of contents. Goes into section 2 and 3. So this document is fairly complex. There's a lot of information in here. We get into credits. And then we get into counselor resources at the very end. And when you go to counselor resources, and I will click on that so that we can look at that, you can see that you have links here to the progress sheet, which for those of you that have received the hard copy that I mailed out to you, the last several pages of the hard copy are in fact the progress sheet. So you may want to separate those from the rest of the document because as you go through the exercises, you're going to want to record your answers in this progress sheet. So no need to click on this link because, as I said, I've already printed it out and it's in the back of your paper guide that I mailed to you. You also have NTTC resources available by direct link. You have a scope manual that you can get to from here. So all of these are hot links that bring you to these various places. You also have the answers to the self-study exercises. So if you want to consult the answers and see whether you got your answers right or not, and if you get an answer wrong, obviously you want to track it down and figure out where you went wrong or what you did wrong. If you are unable to do that, check with your mentor. Your mentor can help you figure out where you went wrong. Don't worry too much about HSA. Well, yeah, you will have an HSA lesson later on, but it's not at the beginning. And then you have the premium tax credit, PDC, PTC, and earned income credit. So those things are specific to those particular topics, and those it's going to be a couple of weeks before you ever get to that material. So here I'll show you the progress sheet. Here's the beginning of the progress sheet here. And as I said, you have a paper copy at the back of your paper manual. So this gets into, I think, probably 8 or 9 pages of this thing. So also, if you see here, click for table of contents, you can get all the way back to the table of contents just by clicking on this link. And here we go, back to the table of contents. So I'm going to get past the table of contents here and look at what is next in the program. And its course introduction starts on page 8. So again, read through this information. Very important that you understand the introduction and what the objectives are of this course. There are also links here in the introduction. Bear with me a second. Okay, here we go. Course introduction. Start by opening Link and Learn course introduction and the skills workout. So I want to focus on these two things for a minute. The course introduction is, and you can look at this page here, this brings you to the IRS Link and Learn website. And to get to the course introduction, you go to skills workout. But before you do that, you're going to see skill check down here. Skill check asks you a few questions just to get some sense of, do you know anything about this subject at all to start with before you ever get into any detail. So you can answer these questions and nobody's keeping a score or anything. So let's see, this one here, for instance, says only volunteers who prepare and review tax returns are required to complete the volunteer standards of conduct training and certification. Now, what if I say false? What if I say true to the second one? Of, I'm just going to poke at some answers. Check my answers. I got them all right. Now, I didn't even read the questions, so I got very lucky. But that's where it begins. And then after that, once you've done that, then you go to what's called the skills workout under the training toolkit here. You go to the skills workout, and now that brings you to publication 4491, the training manual, and it brings you to 10 separate pages, 16 pages that talk about the introduction to the course. So you can read through that if you choose to, and just move to page 2 by you can click this right arrow in the lower right hand corner, or actually this arrow in the upper right hand corner will bring you to the same place. So or you can click on the individual page you want to go to. If you want to go to page 4, you just click on the number 4 and it'll bring you to page 4. Click on the number 6 and it'll bring you to page 6. So that's the way the Link and Learn works. And also notice over on the right hand side, you'll see these materials, and you'll see, if you put your cursor over, you'll see pub 4491 again, which is the training guide introduction lesson. So you can go immediately to that lesson in the 4491 rather than stay here. Also, if you look across the top, the main menu, if you put your cursor on that, you'll see that it brings you to various places. You can highlight those places, go to those various places. You can print this page if you choose to by going to print. There's also a glossary. If you want to click on glossary, it'll bring up the glossary of terms. But this one here is very important, references. So if you're studying something or you're answering a question and you get it wrong, you might want to just click on references, and that will bring you to various places that will give you more insight into what it is that you got wrong, or more insight into the topic that you're reading about that you may be slightly confused about. Maybe you want to go to the Pub 17 and get more detailed information about something. So references is an important part of this. So I'm going to close this now. And so previous, next, and so you get previous, next, and all of that across the bottom. And I think that's probably all we need to say about that. So let me go back. I'm going to close this for the moment. And so that was the skills workout. You're going to see this on each module. You're going to see a skills workout. That is essentially Link and Learn. So when they say skills workout, it means it's going to bring you to Link and Learn taxes produced by the IRS. These Link and Learn modules are very, very well done. They're very interactive, so they ask a lot of questions. And then if you answer a question wrong, it will actually, when it gives you the correct answer, it's going to tell you some information about it. So you'll learn through the whole process. Assessments, let's see, assessments not available for this particular module. So when we get into other modules, we're going to actually get into the income module, and you'll be able to see that there's even more information available. And you can see that you can also get to the practice lab right here. So we're going to do that. We're actually going to go through an exercise with that. So I'm going to go back to my back to my self-study program. And we looked at course introduction, we looked at the skills workout, and we're still in the introduction section of the program. Then we get into tax law basics. And this probably looks familiar to you because we went over this in some of the slides I did earlier, as far as all income is taxable unless the law says otherwise. Here are the primary IRS learning resources and the tax return preparation software. So IRS Link and Learn Taxes. I'm going to click on that just so that you can see that. Here you can see Link and Learn actually listed in a whole list of course topics. So we get filing status, dependents, income, various types of income. So if you're interested in unemployment compensation and how that's taxed, you can go right straight to that. All very enlightening and very highly recommended. As I said before, these modules are professionally done. They're very well done. They're interactive. They keep you interested, and they're time consuming. They will take time to go through, but you will learn everything that you need to know. And then you can even get down to the certification test, and we'll talk more about certification tests later. But this is kind of the top level of the IRS Link and Learn system. So I'm going to minimize that for now, and again, back to the program. So let's see, what's next here? TaxSlayer Practice Lab. So there's a link here for TaxSlayer Practice Lab. Let's see what happens when we go there. So you can see here, and we've already gone over this, we know that the keyword here to get to the next step is Train Pro Web, all one word, Train Pro Web, all uppercase, and that'll get you to the next step where you have to input your username and password. So that gets you to Practice Lab. You can go to Pub 17 on irs.gov. I'm not going to bother with that right now. You can get Form 6744 gives you the volunteer test and retest booklet, which you should get by mail for tax year 2021. We're, of course, going to be working with 2020 for the next few weeks. And you also, the standards of conduct, ethics training is listed here. So anything that is blue and underlined is a link that you can click on and get more information. The next thing that I want to talk about is Bogart tools. There is a gentleman by the name of Jeff Bogart who has created a lot. He's apparently a retired software engineer, and he has created a lot of tools that we have come to rely on very heavily in our program. So we want to introduce you to this. And he's in Colorado, so the CO Tax-Aide means the Colorado Tax-Aide group. And if you click on that site, it brings us here. Welcome to Colorado Resource Toolkit, and you don't need to know what these are right now, but the annuity calculator, the business activity code list, Well, you don't care about Colorado sales tax unless you live in Colorado. Coronavirus tax worksheet, education calculator, very important. EIN search tool. So he's created lots and lots of tools. The home sale worksheet. So if you're dealing with a home sale, that'll be helpful to you. Part year worksheet, railroad retirement worksheet. So as you go through training, you're probably going to be referred to at least one, two, maybe three of these calculators as part of the training. So I will move on from there. Introduction to the intake and interview and quality review sheet exercise. So you're going to learn a lot about intake and interview and quality review sheets. Each taxpayer that comes into us is going to have filled out an intake/interview sheet. It's 4 pages long. You're going to see, though, in your training that you're primarily going to see pages 1 and 2 because pages 3 and 4 deal with some back-end questions that we're really not going to be getting involved with until later in the training process. So right now you're going to be concerned with pages 1 and 2 of Form 13614C. And I'll show you one of those in a little bit. So here's an introductory exercise. Here's a little, just create a practice lab account. So if you haven't already created your practice lab account, this is a little bit redundant because you've already seen this in my previous slides, but this is kind of a little bit different take on it. So if you haven't created your account, you can use this to go ahead and create your account. Access Practice Lab via TaxSlayer Springboard. So the TaxSlayer Springboard is at this location, https://vitataxslayerpro.com. That'll get you to the Springboard. And this top block right here is a little piece of the Springboard. The Springboard is a full page, but you'll see that it has the word Practice Lab, and then it'll also have the live software that you can access from there too, as well as a blog that TaxSlayer maintains. So 3 very useful tools that all can be accessed from the same place. So I always keep a tab set to this TaxSlayerPro.com Springboard. And this is where you enter Train Pro Web, as we talked about. So it's always a 2-step process. You enter that Train Pro Web, and then you go to username and password. Only you have a record of your account information. So if you forgot your username, you have a way to forget username, forget password at the bottom of this block here. If you ever forget your username or password, you can click on that and you can go through the process of giving it a new password. Okay, so that's Practice Lab. This is what you're going to see once you finally log in. You're going to see this view here, which is you're going to be able to search for a particular client, or you're going to be able to just start a new return. Notice it says 2019. Yours is going to say 2020. View all returns. So it gives you a little introduction to TaxSlayer. And then this is the screen as far as what it looks like when you first start a tax return. You're going to enter the Social Security number for the taxpayer. I'm going to go through this as a demonstration, so you don't really need to spend a lot of time on it now. All right, income. This is where I want to begin and actually show you the process of creating a return. So let's assume now that you're getting into the income section and you're going to read this page here. You don't really have any links to click on at this point. But when you get to the next page, page 17, I'm sorry, page 18, I guess. Yes, page 18. AARP Foundation Tax-Aide Learning Plan. So you go step by step through this. Focus on the objectives for the lesson. Open the Link and Learn Income Wages section. So you click on this link, Income and Wages. and it brings you here. So here again, you can answer some very simple questions to kind of get a feel for how much do I really know about income before I even delve into this. Or you can just go straight to skills workout. So I'm going to click on skills workout. And so here you can see publication 4491 income. So you can click on publication 4491 again, which is the training guide, and you can go there and you can read about income. Now, what you want to keep in mind is that 4491 training guide is a rather thick manual, has a lot of information in it, but a lot of this information in 4491 is going to be redundant to what you're going to learn if you go through these 37 pages down in the lower right corner. If you go individually through all 37 of these pages, you're going to see most of the information that's already in 4491. So whether you want to see all that redundancy or not, we actually have many people, many trainees that have gone through this program and have chosen to focus on the Link and Learn tax modules and really not pay much attention to the 4491 and have done just fine. They've been able to certify. They're excellent counselors today as a result. So I'll leave it up to you. If you're detail oriented, you're probably going to want to do both the intake and the Link and Learn modules as well as the publication 4491 training manual. If you want to get to the end more quickly and probably have almost as much information at the end, just do the Link and Learn. It really depends on how much time you have, how much patience you have, and how much, I maybe try it for a couple of modules and see exactly how redundant is it. Are you getting any additional information from the 4491 that you didn't get from the Link and Learn modules? And then you be the judge as to whether you want to continue with 4491 or not. So here again, if you lower right corner or the upper right corner, you can go to the next page. Here you can see the intake and interview sheet with regard to income, and you can see the various questions that are on form 13614-C, and you'll see that the taxpayers, when you get to the real world, will have checked yes, no, or unsure, and then anything that they check unsure is our obligation to make sure that we move that to a yes or a no. So we ask whatever questions we need to of the taxpayer to determine whether the answer is yes or no. And then you go to the next page, and I'm not going to go through all these pages, but I want to show you how interactive it is. Here we go with a skills warm-up right away. Which section of the completed intake, interview, and quality review sheet should indicate which Forms W-2 and Forms 1099 the taxpayer received? A, personal information, B, marital status, C, income, D, expenses. Well, I know the correct answer, but I'm going to select an incorrect answer and see what happens. I select D. Oh, incorrect. Please try again. All right, well, let's try C. Oh, that is correct. Now notice it doesn't just say it's correct. It says the income section of the intake and interview sheet asks taxpayers about the income. It's important to address all income received by taxpayers because some income may be fully or partially taxable. So it gives you the knowledge as well as the correct answer. And then we go to the next page. Income job aids. So these are the job aids. These are all links that you can click on. You have a Form W-2 instruction. You can go to how/where to enter income, Schedule B, interest and dividends. So a lot of links that you can click on. And then you can go to the next step. And here we have a case study. And here again, it's all very interactive. You can read through the case study and they will ask you questions. You can answer those questions. So here's a skills workout. Under what circumstances must a person report taxable income? Always unless the income is only from interest. Always unless the income is so small. Always. So it's clearly it's a good education. You can go down to the lower right corner and you can click on publication 4491 if you need to go to that for any reason. You can probably also get to it from references up in the upper right corner. Yeah, you can get publication 4491 from there, or pub 17, or whatever you need to access. So, as I said, the IRS has done a terrific job with these things, and they've been getting better from each year to the next. So I'm going to move away from that for the moment, and I'm going to, oh, and there's also a certification warm-up. So to prepare you for getting certified as a counselor, they have the certification warm-up. So this one goes through a scenario. Marie and her husband, Aurora, have 3 forms 1099 INT. They have the state of Washington bond interest for 300, the Epping Credit Union for 300, and Brenton Savings and Loan for 960. How much interest income should they report on Form 1040, Schedule B, Part 1? So, well, if they reported all of it, it would be, let's say, $1,860, right? Oh, that's incorrect. Interest on municipal bonds is exempt from federal income tax. Oh, so what does that mean? Where's the, okay, so state of Washington bond interest is $300. So let's try 1560 instead of 1860. Ah, correct. Arturo and Marie's total interest to report on Schedule B Part 1 is $1,560. The state of Washington bond is tax exempt interest. So if you get the answer wrong, you learn from your mistake. And nobody's keeping track at this point. Nobody's going to score you on this. So it just keeps you interested by being quizzed often. All right, we're going to get back to the program at heart, the self-study program. And here again, keep in mind, you can always go back to the table of contents by click the table of contents. All right, so here is an actual practice exercise. So we're going to click on a form 13614C, intake, interview, and quality review sheet. Now, I already have this review sheet in my PDF viewer. So you would, in your case, you would have to download that and you would have to view it in Adobe Photoshop Reader, not Photoshop, I'm sorry, Adobe Acrobat Reader, or one thing I caution you is that if you bring it up in Google Chrome and you have not downloaded it, you may not be able to click on these links. So I'm going to immediately go to the one that I've already downloaded, which is right here. And I'm also going to increase the size so that you can see it better. So here we have the intake and interview sheet for Carl Evans and Janice Bryant. You can see that they live on 2019 Summersby Street. You can see both of their birth dates, July 8th, 45 and January 1st, 65. Their job titles, one's an inspector, one's a teacher. As far as city and state, you assume your own city and state. So in my case, I'm going to put Marshfield, Massachusetts 02050. You can see the daytime phone numbers are just fictitious phone numbers, but TaxSlayer does require at least one phone number, so you do have to put that into TaxSlayer. In this case, they're married. Did you get married in 2020? The answer is no. Did you live with your spouse during any part of the 6 months in 2020? The answer is yes. So, and here you can see on page 2 of their form that they've checked off what they had for income. So they had wages from salary. They had wages, they have interest and dividends from checking and savings accounts. They had a refund of state and local income taxes, and they had unemployment compensation. So that's the income that they had. Now, the way these exercises work is it's really only going to take one aspect of the tax law at a time. And so you're not going to be creating complex returns, at least not for a few weeks. You're not going to be creating complex returns where one thing is going to affect something else. you're going to create very simple returns that really only have one thing going on at a time. So we're going to do an example of the wages for both Carl and Janice as an example. So I'm going to minimize this, and I'm going to go back to my self-study program. Okay, here we go. So I'm not going to click on this because I already have it in my viewer. And it says open practice lab and create a new return. Okay, well, I guess I have to go to practice lab. So how can I get to practice lab? Well, I could go, see if I click on this. This is not going to give me the practice lab. So I'm going to close this. Aha. So as I recall, I can get the practice lab from here. So let's see, main menu, practice lab, how about references? No. Skills workout. Workout resources. Practice lab. It's kind of a roundabout way of getting there, but this is one way to get to practice lab. I'll open the window and I'm going to type uppercase TRAINPROWEB, log in. And I have a bunch of different accounts. They all have the word train in them, which, as you recall, I mentioned in one of my previous slides. I'm not going to use this particular account. I'm going to use this one here. And I'm using a password manager, so it automatically fills in the information. Okay, here you can see that we've got to practice lab. Now, the options that I have is I can go to practice area where I can immediately start creating a return. But before I do that, I want to show you that you have all of these terrific videos to watch. So if you're interested in doing, the user guide, for instance, for TaxSlayer can be accessed from here under section 2 or section 1. Actually, the user guide can be accessed in various places. Okay, they all have user guides. So preparing a return, starting a new return, entering basic income part one. So if you're unclear on how to enter basic income in TaxSlayer, you can simply click on this video, and you do have to initially put your name, and you have to. It's going to ask you what program you belong to. You're going to say AARP Tax-Aide, AARP Foundation Tax-Aide. And then after that, it's going to ask you for the site ID number. That you can leave that blank because you don't need to put that in. And then you will be signed in, and you can click on a button that says remember me so that you don't have to do that every time you get into one of these videos. So I would recommend that you do that on one of them so that you will remain signed in and you will be able to access them. The videos are excellent. You'll learn a lot from them. Now keep in mind the videos are not specifically done for the Tax-Aide people. They're done for a much broader audience. So some of the things that may be covered in the video don't necessarily apply to Tax-Aide, but the vast majority of the topics do pertain to us. So that's getting to the videos. So let's go to the practice area and look at TaxSlayer itself. Initializing practice lab, and here we are. Okay, now immediately you're going to see On the upper right corner, you're going to see change tax year. Now, the software right now especially Practice Lab is designed for 2019 and 2020. So I could go back and do a practice return for 2019 if I wanted to. But I really want to stay focused on 2020. And you notice that over in the upper left corner, it defaults to 2020. Now, one thing you need to know is that after Thanksgiving at some point, the 2021 software is going to be available, in which case the software is going to start defaulting to 2021, and you're going to have to actually go up to this change tax year, and you're going to have to change to 2020 until I tell you that it's time to start 21 tax returns. So that's, you can also see that up in the upper right corner, you can log out from here. You can see the main menu, client on the left side, main menu, client status, IRS website, a lot of different links that you can click on and go to different places. But for now, I just want to create a practice return. Notice the message center. The message center is a place where you can get messages from TaxSlayer support people. Will post messages on there. They may post something like, we're having problems with TaxSlayer today. This is what it's doing. Beware, you might want to come back later. So there might be messages from the administrators of the system, the TaxSlayer people. But also, this is useful during the tax season. You can actually message your fellow counselors. So some sites actually use this to send email back and forth. So while you're working on a tax return, you could see a message pop up that may be from one of your fellow counselors. So somebody trying to communicate with you while you're actually working on a tax return. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually clear this out because there's 453 messages. So it's obvious I haven't been looking at this. So I'm just going to ignore, these are all from the administrator. I'm just going to click on this button in the upper right corner, which essentially selects everything. And I'm going to say deselect, delete selected. I'm going to delete all of those 453 messages in one fell swoop. So here we go. And so inbox is now empty. So when I go back to the main menu, notice my message center says 0. Okay, so if some other counselor sends me a message, suddenly there's going to be a 1 there, and I'm going to see it right away. So I'm going to start a new return. Okay, and I have printed out both the intake interview sheet, form 13614C, and since I sent you the paper version of the self-study program, I have printed out the page that actually has the 2 W-2s for this taxpayer. So I'm going to show you how to start a tax return. So I'm going to start with the Social Security number, which is on the intake sheet. Okay, no, it's not on the intake sheet. It's on the, okay, it's on the program. So it's 115, 115. Then I'm going to hit the tab key to get to the next field. Notice that it automatically fills in zeros. All the practice exercises have zeros for the center two numbers, and there's no way of avoiding that. That's the way it is. And so 115007001. And then I'm going to hit tab again, and you have to enter this. You have to enter the same number twice, and that's just to make sure that you get it right. So 015 tab 7001, and then available taxpayer profiles. It defaults to basic, so this is just going to create a basic tax return. Now we have some other profiles set up for if somebody came in that had strictly retirement income, we could use this profile, or if they had rental property, which of course is out of scope for Tax-Aide. We don't do rental property, so that shouldn't even be here. But here again, this practice lab is really set up to be used not only by Tax-Aide people, but also by VITA people, which have different parameters. So we're going to use basic. So since it defaults to basic, I can just go down here and say start return, this blue button down here, start return. Please fix all fields with errors. Oh, okay, what's the error? 015, 007001. What doesn't it like? Oh, 115. Aha. That should be 015. They have to match. Okay, 015. Let's try starting the return. Here we go. There we go. Okay, what is your filing status? Well, the program tells us what the filing status is. Filing status, married filing jointly on page 19 of the program. Tells us married filing jointly. It's all in that block that says basic information that must be verified with the intake interview quality review sheet. All right, so now notice over here there's a filing status wizard. So if you were not sure of the filing status, you could actually run this wizard to help you figure out what the correct filing status is. But we're not really going to talk about filing status in training until I think it's the 4th or 5th week. So filing status is a very complex topic. And so we're going to do the simpler things first, and we're going to talk about filing status later in the course. So I'm going to say that's actually my password manager that comes up in the upper right corner. So that should not happen to you. I'm going to click on continue so that I can go to the next step. All right, personal information. So we're going to enter the taxpayer's name, which is Carl Evans, but I'm going to make a suggestion here. First of all, you don't need to do this, but I always like to use uppercase for everything when I'm doing a tax return. Now, when you actually, if you were to put everything in lowercase or upper and lowercase, when the tax return prints out on your printer, it's going to print all uppercase, regardless of whether you chose to do upper and lower or just lower. So Carl's the first name. His middle initial is R, and his last name is Evans. But my suggestion is I'm going to call this taxpayer Carl Wages. And the reason I'm going to do that is because by the time this training is by the time you're in your 4th, 5th, 6th week of training, you're going to have so many small individual tax returns, and you may want to go back to one of them and say, now, which tax return was it that had wages? Because I want to go back and look that over to refresh my memory. Well, you're not going to know because all those tax returns are going to say Carl Evans, and you're not going to know which one is wages. So I suggest that you make either the first or last name wages so that you'll know which tax return to go back to. So tab key brings you to the next field. Here again, the Social Security number is already filled in, so you don't have to correct anything there. Tab to the date of birth, and I'll give you a little hint about month, day, and year on date of birth. Now, his date of birth is on the intake interview sheet. It's July 8th, 1945. Now, there's a pull-down list where you can just select July from the pull-down list, and the same thing with the rest of the fields. But if you tab over and you just enter the number 8, now you never put any leading zeros in this, otherwise it's not going to like it. So if I just click on the number 8 and then tab again and then enter 1945, I won't have to pick from the list, and it's actually faster. Especially once you've done a few of these, you're going to find that you can zip right through this without touching your mouse and without spending time going through a lengthy list of years, especially 1945. There's a pretty lengthy list of years that you've got to find 1945. So the occupation is inspector. Inspector Clouseau. Okay, and you'll notice there are a bunch of questions. So each taxpayer that you enter, there are a list of questions. I strongly recommend that you get familiar with these questions. I can assure you that none of these questions apply to this particular taxpayer, so I'm not going to spend any time on them. But as you prepare yourself to do actual tax returns, these questions are absolutely essential that you know that they're there and that you know if any one of them applies to the taxpayer that you're working on at the time. So really get familiar with them, but we're not concerned with it today. The spouse's name is Janice L. Bryant. Janice L. See, it comes up wages automatically because the assumption when a couple is married, the assumption by TaxSlayer is that it's the same last name. But in this case, we had to backspace over it and enter Bryant. Now, what's her social security number? Now, that's on the program sheet, page 19, in that block where it says social security number 11500. So 115. Now here we have to enter the 00 and 0000. Tab to the date, and this is January 5th, 1965, as I recall. January 1st, 1965. So January is the first month. I'm just going to enter the number 1, and then tab, the number 5, tab, and type in 1965, tab. Occupation, teacher. Again, a whole list of questions, not exactly the same questions as with the taxpayer. This is now the spouse. Questions are a little different, but here again, get familiar with them. You're going to need to know whether those questions apply to your taxpayer or spouse. Address and phone number. So we're going to put the address of 2019 Summersby Street. 2019 space Summer. Whoops. Summersby Street. And enter your zip code 02050, and it automatically finds Marshfield, Massachusetts, so you don't have to fill in the rest of this. Now this telephone number is required, and the number is 295-555-1234. Okay, you don't have to put the secondary telephone number, but you notice there's a red asterisk here, which means that's a required field. So you do have to fill it in. And then you've got a place where you could go to filing status, but we've already done the filing status thing, so we don't need to do that. We'll just go to continue. And when you hit continue in TaxSlayer, it saves the information that you had entered in the previous screen. So you don't have to worry about going somewhere to click on save. So anytime you hit continue, it automatically saves. Now it talks about the Massachusetts return. We have no real intention of doing a Massachusetts return at this point. We're just doing a simple federal return, but it does bring up the screen, so we have to do something here. So the Massachusetts healthcare reform law requires most residents 18 or over with access to affordable healthcare insurance need to obtain it. Would you like to complete Mass Schedule HC now? The answer is no, because I don't really want to do a mass return at all. And then here, you can just click on continue, and it'll bring you back to the federal return. Now, we get into dependents. Now, this couple has no dependents, so I can just answer no to this. Then the recovery rebate credit. Did you receive any stimulus payments in 2020 from the government due to COVID-19? Include all stimulus payments for anyone claimed on this return. Now, the assumption I'm going to make, and we should make on all of these exercises in the program, in the self-study program, the assumption that we should make is that the taxpayers received all of the economic stimulus payments that they should have received. So my spouse and I received stimulus payments during the first round. So the first 2 payments were $1,200 a piece. So there's $2,400 there. Whoops, not $5,400, $2,400. My spouse and I received stimulus payments during the second round, and that was $600 a piece. So there's $1,200 there. And so there is no recovery rebate credit if the taxpayer received what they should have received in the first place. The only time they get a recovery rebate credit is if maybe one of them received 600, but the other one didn't. So you'd put in the amount they actually received, and that would generate a recovery rebate credit for the balance. But we're not going to be dealing with, we dealt with that a lot in the actual tax year 2020 last year, but for exercise purposes, we just plug in the numbers that they should have gotten. Now, if this would have been a single person, of course, it wouldn't have been 2,400, it would have been 1,200, and this would have been 600 and not 1,200. All right, let's move on. Here we get to the income screen. Okay, now the income that we have is our W-2s. We have two W-2s, one for the taxpayer and one for the spouse. So I'm going to click on, now on any one of these lines for income, even though you have a spot over here that says begin, notice when I go over them, it highlights the entire line. You can click anywhere along this line. You can click on the W-2 and the gray area in between, anywhere on that line, and it will do the same thing as if you had clicked on begin. So I'm just going to click in the middle here. Okay, and here's your W-2. It defaults to a standard W-2, which 99.9% of them are. So the next thing I'm going to do is select who's the employee. Is it Carl or is it Janice? And in this case, Janice actually is first in the program. So I'm going to click on Janice. And then I'm going to enter the employer ID number, the EIN for this employer. It's in box B of the W-2. It says employer identification number. These numbers in the real world are critical. You have to get these numbers correct, or it creates all kinds of problems for electronic filing. You can't electronically file something that has an incorrect EIN. So check and double check your EINs to make sure that you've entered the correct number. Don't just hastily put the numbers in and just assume that they're correct. Now, when I click out of that field, notice it pulls up Jefferson County School District because somebody had previously entered this into TaxSlayer, and TaxSlayer remembered that this EIN number was associated with Jefferson County School District, and the address is 12,210 Robin Road. Now, if you enter an EIN number for a business that never had been entered into TaxSlayer, you'd have to enter the employee name and the employer name, the address, and the zip code and the city. You'd have to enter all of that information. But once you get it in there, the next person that comes along that enters that same EIN number is going to have that self-populate automatically. So you can also notice that Janice's address is plugged in on the left-hand side here. And then you get down to the actual meat and potatoes of the W-2, boxes 1 through 6 and beyond. So let's start with wages. It's $21,010. Now I want to give you a little hint about, notice the pennies that are all showing up in the W-2. What you should do is you should get in the habit of rounding up or down in your head automatically when you see a number. So when you see $21.10, if the cents are less than 50 cents, you're going to round down. If it's 50 cents or more, you're going to round up. So if you had put the cents in, the software would automatically round it for you. The problem is that when you get into the habit of putting in cents, you got to put in the decimal point and the cents, and it's time consuming. It's much faster if you can round in your head and just put in the $21,010. 21,010. Okay. Now when I hit tab to go to the next field, notice what happens. It fills in boxes 3, 4, 5, and 6 automatically. But before I do that, I need to fill in box 2. $2,100 was the federal tax withheld. I'm going to put that in, and then I'm going to tab to the next box. Now, TaxSlayer has assumed that box 3 and 5 are the same as box 1. That may or may not be the case on the W-2. If it is the case, TaxSlayer calculates box 4 and 5 automatically. Those are usually correct, but you need to double check it with the W-2 and make sure that they are correct. If not, you change them to whatever is on the W-2. The W-2 is the determining factor. You never leave things as they are calculated automatically. You always make sure that the W-2 information is entered exactly as it's shown on the W-2. So in this case, actually with Janice, box 3 and 5 are correct, but notice box 4 and 6 are not correct. So I'm going to change those now. Box 4, because it's over 50 cents, is $1,365. And box 6 is $319. Okay. And so now we've gotten past the first 6 boxes. And we have nothing in 7, 8, 9, and 10 or 11, but box 12 is the next box. Now there's a code number here, code D. So you're going to select from the list code D. You could have entered a D from the keyboard as well. And the amount is $1,000. Okay, we don't know what code D means at this point, but you're going to learn that in your studies. And also look at box, oh, I'm sorry, we still have another code. So if you look at add another row and click on that, you're going to add a DD. And the number for that is, again, over 50 cents, so it's $47.35. And now look at box 13. Retirement plan is checked. We need, this is very important, and this is one of the first things that new tax preparers get wrong is they don't see the check boxes. If any one of those 3 check boxes is checked, it has to be transferred onto the tax, and it influences many calculations. If that checkbox for retirement plan is not there, some things get calculated totally incorrectly. So the checkbox is extremely important. Make sure you get in the habit of always looking for these 3 checkboxes and whether they're checked or not. All right, so that's box 13. Box 14 is actually for other information. And in most cases, that other information doesn't go anywhere. So we do want to fill it in, however. Now we look under the list for FSA, which is it's a savings account for medical. I forget what the F represents. But there's nothing here in the list for that, so I'm going to select other. And then I'm going to put in the amount, 480. Flexible spending account. I'm sorry, my memory has failed me on that one. Flexible spending account. Okay, so box 14 is done. And then we go down to the state information, box 15. So you go to box 15, you select the state, which is Massachusetts. Where are you, Massachusetts? Right here. Okay, state EIN number, when you click on that field, it fills in the EIN number from the federal. That's usually fine, so that'll just accept that. State wages are in pink, which means we need to double check them, and that's fine because the state wages on box 16 are in fact that number. The state income tax, 1,050, so you got to plug that in box 17, 1051. Okay. All right, so we're done with that W-2 for Janice, but we've got one for Carl. So down here, and we could have said continue, and then you just go and you select another, but there's a button here called save and enter another, which saves you a click. So if you click on this, you're going to be able to start another W-2 immediately, whereas otherwise you'd have a couple more clicks before you could get to the next W-2. So let's click on that. Oh, what's this say? We have some concerns with your W-2. Your Social Security withholdings, box 4, appear to be too large. Generally, your Social Security withholdings should not be larger than 6.2% of the amount in box 3. And they say the same thing or something similar as far as the Medicare withholdings. They appear to be too large as well. So those numbers that we had to change in boxes 4 and 6 don't really conform to what they should look like. And in some cases, you will find that to be true. But as I said before, whatever's on the W-2 is what is the bottom line. So even though they don't fit the format, we have to go with what's on the W-2. The good thing about this message is it prompts you to at least double check to see, well, did I miskey them? Did I fat finger the number? Did I get it wrong? But if you find that the number that you put in is the number that's on the W-2, then you move on, you click on continue. And here's the new W-2. Now in this case, we're going to select Carl Wages is the taxpayer in this case. And we're going to enter the EIN number now for this. We're now on page 20 of this of the self-study program. And we're going to enter 256234 and then we're going to click on the employer name, and notice it comes up again because somebody else had worked on this exercise previously. It came up with petroleum, oil, and gas. And 624 cast bars, that's all correct. And then we get down to entering the information as far as the income. 12,283, tab, and notice it automatically filled in boxes 3, 4, 5, and 6, which in this case is correct. So I'm going to fill in the federal tax withheld, 1228, and I can cycle through these things one at a time, and I can leave them alone. Notice I said, notice box 4 and 6 have pennies in there, but the tax layer, when it does its calculation, is going to round automatically. So we're just going to leave it alone. We're not going to change it. We're not going to round it and waste time on that. Nothing in box 12. Nothing in 13 as far as check boxes, so we don't have to check anything there. So we go right down to box 15. We select Massachusetts again, and it's going to automatically put in the state EIN number. 12,283 is in fact what's in box 16, so we can leave that alone. And then 614 is the tax paid. Now, very important. Now, even though we're not going to be working on a Massachusetts tax return, it's very important that you actually put the Massachusetts information in, because there are federal calculations that are done and need to know how much tax was paid to a state. And in this case, $614 was paid to the state of Massachusetts. So that's it for the two W-2s. I'm going to click on continue because I don't have any more to enter. And now that brings us to a list of W-2s. It shows the spouse and the taxpayer, both of the W-2s, the income on each of the W-2s, the tax withheld on each of the W-2s. You can click on the pencil if you need to edit them in any way, or if you need to delete either one of them, you can delete them here. You can also get up to, if you look at the taxpayer up at the top of the screen, you can see that you can enter notes. So if this particular tax return has something unusual going on, you can enter notes. You can go to helpful tools. You can save and exit the return, which will automatically save everything, and you can get back to it later. And that's essentially everything. You have help and support up here, or you can save and exit from here as well. So I'm finished with W-2s. I'm going to click on continue again. Now notice over on the right hand side, you can see that the adjusted gross income is calculating at $33,293. The federal is calculating at $31,10. The federal refund, I should say, and the state refund is calculating at $606. Now on state, on the state, I'm sorry, on the state we have no idea whether that's a correct number or not, but that's what's calculating at the moment. Now, when you're actually doing live returns and, if the taxpayer happens to be watching your screen, you may not want them to see this because these numbers change as you go through the process of creating a tax return. And so we've had situations where taxpayers get very upset when they see these numbers when, in fact, we're not finished. And by the time we finish, those numbers are going to change significantly. So notice this collapse menu up here in the upper right corner. When you click on that, that disappears. So no longer a distraction. And you click on the push pin and it brings it back. So kind of a nice feature that they added a couple of years ago. And so now we're going to click on continue and look at the tax return itself. So we've got nothing else to enter. This is a very simple 2 W-2s, nothing else going on in this tax return. So now I want to look at the return itself. How do I do that? I go over to the left-hand side and notice federal section, income. So I can see where I had entered my W-2, and I can get back to that if I want by clicking on this. I can go to, there's a rebate recovery credit, which should be 0 at this point. I can go to that if I want to, or other taxes. So there's various parts of the tax return that I can access and do more data entry if I want to, or correct some things that may have been entered incorrectly. I can go to health insurance. I can go to the state section of the tax return, but I can also, and this is what I want, summary print. When I click on summary print, this is what happens. You can actually see the tax return. Now this is not a PDF file, so this actually cannot be printed from here. This is just to look at, but it shows on box 1, wages $33,293 and total income $33,293 and standard deduction $26,100. You can see that the standard deduction for 2020 was quite high for a married couple, that especially somebody that was over 65. And so if they had wanted to itemize deductions, they would have had to have a lot of deductions in order to beat $26,100. So the taxable income ends up being $7,193. And if you want to get to page 2 down here in the lower left corner, you just click on the number 2 to get to page 2 of the 1040. And now that brings us to page 2, where you can see the tax is $718, and that carries down. Schedule 3, box 7, $500. We can look at Schedule 3 to see what that $500 is, but I'm not really concerned about it at this point. And so we can see that the refund is $3,110 for this person, for these people. And then if you go to 3 and 4, 3 shows you Schedule 1, which really has nothing on it. And then 4 shows you Schedule 2, which has nothing on it. But here's Schedule 3 with the $500, which is the retirement savers credit. So this is $500 that they get as a credit for having put money into a retirement plan at work. So nice little credit for them. Now, if you go back to page 1, actually any one of these pages, these numbers that appear in blue over here are actually hot links where you can access. So if you wanted to go to where you entered wages, you could just click on this and it brings you back to the W-2s. And then if you wanted to go back to summary print, you go back to summary print on the left-hand side of the screen, you go back to summary print. Now, if you wanted to print this tax return out, oh, by the way, there's also a 1040 view. There's also a summary view here. So you're looking at the 1040 view. The summary view actually looks a little different. So this is what you're seeing on the 1040 and then the Schedule 1, the Schedule 2. Now, now for some reason, this isn't working. It's not showing the 1040 for some reason. So it's probably because it's Practice Lab. So go back to the 1040 view. And if you go up to the top, you'll notice View Print Return. If you view print return, you're going to create a PDF file. And it's only when you click on print your 2020 return right here that the PDF file actually gets generated. And then you have to download it. And so I'm going to download it. And then I'm going to click on it. And you're going to see, okay, here's the tax return in a PDF format, which you can print out. A couple of pages that, I mean, see, they talks about an invoice, but of course we don't invoice our taxpayers. But because this practice lab is used by more people than just people with in the Tax-Aide group, it kind of covers all the bases. So here's a synopsis of their 2020 tax return. You can see that their name and the last 4 digits of their social appears on here. A process date, their birth dates show up on here. Well, at least the last year, and I guess the beginning of their date doesn't show, but it does show their age, 75 and 55. Married, filing jointly. And then it shows a summary of their income and filing status. And then it shows a summary of their W-2s on this page. And it actually shows a depiction of what the actual W-2 should look like. So we use these pages to do what's called quality review. Somebody takes a second look at this tax return and makes sure that the first person that entered this data didn't make any mistakes. And we do it by looking at these pages right here and comparing them to the paper documents. Here's Form 8879, which gives us permission to electronically file their tax return. It has basic information on it, and we require that the taxpayer and the spouse both sign this form. Even though they end up keeping the signed Form 8879, it is necessary that they sign it and that we see them sign it. Once we see them sign it, we give it back to them. They take it home. They store it for at least 3 years, hopefully more. And here's the tax return itself. Notice it's a 1040 SR. Taxpayer automatically, if you're over 60, if any one of the couple are over 65, they will print automatically a 1040 SR, which has larger print. And it's structured a little bit differently because of the larger print, but it's easier for elderly people to see. And the elderly have been very pleased with this new format. So this is what it looks like. And as I said, you can always print this out. And this is what page 2 looks like. And now with it, there is a page 3 because of the senior. You know, the regular 1040 only has 2 pages, but the senior version has 3 pages. And then it prints out Schedule 3 with the $500 on it. And now it prints out itemized deductions when, in fact, they didn't itemize deductions. So that's just because it's practice lab. When you get to the real world, Schedule A will not print out if they did not itemize the deductions. So, and this is the credit for the Qualified Retirement Savers Credit, the Form 8880. And a worksheet for Recovery Rebate Credit, which they did not get. They should have gotten no rebate credit at all. And this is the Massachusetts return, which may or may not be correct because we just let Tax-Aide do its thing and create the return. But typically with Massachusetts, there are things that you have to double check and things that you have to change in order to make it correct. So you won't be trained on Massachusetts until December on the 2020 and then January for the 2021. So you'll get your training on Massachusetts. I ask that you just focus your attention on the federal return for the next 6 weeks. And essentially that's the end of creating a return in TaxSlayer. So let me close this down and minimize this. And then when I'm done with creating the return, I'm going to click Save and Exit. And I'm going to save and exit the return. Okay, and then it wants me to log in. So that's a sign that we are finished. And so thank you for bearing with me. I'm sure it's been intriguing for you. Um, so that's the end of the course, and I will have a few more words after the video stops. Thank you for listening and viewing.